Original villain. Long before Syndrome took over, the original antagonist of The Incredibles was a much older, sophisticated villain named Zarek. Created in 1998, Zarek was designed as a Bond-style mastermind with a disturbing, personal connection to the Parr family. In the earliest drafts, Zarek was actually Helen Parr's ex-boyfriend. He was a cold, calculating genius who had used cruel scientific experiments to unnaturally extend his life for over 200 years. When Helen discovered his true age and his horrific plans to use her as a human test subject, she abandoned him, but Zarek's obsession only grew. Driven by a centuries-old grudge, he planned to use his technological empire to dismantle society and wipe out the entire Parr family as the ultimate act of revenge. Early concept art even hints at a secret romantic history with Mirage, suggesting a much darker and more mature adult version of the movie. Ultimately, Brad Bird and Pixar executives felt Syndrome's rejected sidekick arc brought more energy to the film. Zarek was scrapped and relegated to the comic series, which was also unfortunately canceled midway. Kari activates Jack-Jack's power. It was originally a major subplot that was cut from the theatrical release of The Incredibles. This deleted scene explains what really happened with Kari during the babysitting disaster. The scene begins with Kari attempting to give Jack-Jack neurological stimulation by playing Mozart. This is based on the real-world Mozart effect theory, which suggests that listening to classical music can boost brain development. In The Incredibles, this music actually triggers Jack-Jack's brain, causing his every powers to explode all at once. Jack-Jack begins teleporting through walls, floating to the ceiling, and phasing through solid floors, all while Kari desperately tries to catch him with fireplace tongs and tie him to barbells to keep him grounded. The most chilling part of the cut footage is the arrival of Syndrome. A sleep-deprived Kari answers the door and actually believes he is the replacement babysitter. When she asks why he has an S on his suit, Syndrome replies that if he called himself a babysitter, his uniform would have to say BS. The scene originally ended with a government interrogation. Agent Rick Dicker is horrified to learn that Kari told her parents about the baby's powers. To protect the super's secret, Dicker uses a memory-erasing device, wiping Kari's mind and leaving her unconscious. Pixar eventually realized this subplot slowed down the movie's climax, so they pulled it from the film and released it later as a short film. This deleted opening is far more intense than the final movie. Originally, the story began with Bob and Helen sleeping one night, and then Syndrome breaks into the Parr's new home, unmasking himself and revealing he escaped prison to take revenge on Mr. Incredible. Syndrome uses his zero-point energy to brutally ram Bob into the walls and ceiling. When Helen intervenes, Syndrome is shocked to find they are married and have children, so Syndrome coldly says that supers aren't supposed to breed, a line that hints at a much darker, regulated world for heroes. The tension peaks when Syndrome enters the nursery. He finds the crib empty, only to realize a terrified baby Violet has turned invisible. After Violet spits on him, a distracted Syndrome drops the parents. Bob uses a mirror to reflect the freeze ray back at Syndrome, sticking him to the ceiling. Realizing the fight broke a gas pipe, the family barely escapes through a wall before their house explodes. This scrapped sequence shows Syndrome as more of a secondary villain, similar to the role Bon Voyage eventually played in the theatrical release. Kari loses her mind. This deleted scene from Incredibles 2 provides a much darker look at the aftermath of Kari's trauma. While the original short film ends with her memory being erased, this discarded sequence shows Bob and Helen visiting the McKean house to investigate the damage. The scene starts with Kari's father, Jess, opening the door and is clearly furious, demanding to know why the Parrs left his daughter alone with a baby overnight. Helen tries to explain that their house was destroyed, but the conversation takes a chilling turn when Kari finally appears. She is twitchy and behaving as if her mind is completely broken. When Helen asks about the frantic phone messages she left, Kari claims her memory is a total blank. The only response she offers at the mention of Jack-Jack is a haunting, repetitive giggle and the word flashcards. Despite the obvious psychological damage, Kari insists that Jack-Jack was perfectly normal. Sensing something is deeply wrong, her parents intervene and physically stop the questioning, officially banning Kari from ever babysitting again. Pixar likely deleted this from Incredibles 2 because it reveals that the government's memory wipe actually had a drastic negative effect on Kari's mental state, shifting the movie's lighthearted tone into pure tragedy. Honey's face reveal. Originally, Frozone's wife Honey was going to make a physical appearance in Incredibles 2. In this scrapped sequence, Honey watches the Underminer's drill tear through the city from her her apartment. Anticipating the chaos, she grabs Lucius's supersuit to hide it. When Lucius enters looking for his gear, Honey claims she's washing it while desperately stuffing the suit under couch cushions and into bookshelves. Eventually, she hides it in a kitchen cabinet and pretends to read a newspaper. Seeing her glance toward the cabinet, Lucius freezes her feet in place to retrieve his suit. Honey quickly breaks free and even tackles him to stop him from leaving. However, director Brad Bird ultimately cut the scene, deciding that Honey was much funnier as an off-screen voice. Helen's confrontation. In this deleted scene, Helen actually confronts Bob about a suspected affair. While Bob is relaxing in his study, Helen reveals she noticed his supersuit was missing while she was cleaning. She is furious, arguing that Bob is risking their family's safety by taking the suit out of hiding. But then she reveals a strand of long hair she found where he keeps his gear. The hair is silver, and she demands to know who it belongs to. Bob nervously claims it belongs to an old lady at the dry cleaners, but the tension quickly boils over. Finally, Bob tells her to just ask what she truly wants to ask. When Helen directly asks if he is having an affair, Bob replies with bitter sarcasm, claiming he just wanted to feel good for once. Pixar likely cut this because it felt too much like a heavy adult drama. Helen's nightmare. In this scrapped sequence, we get a surreal look into Helen's subconscious. Feeling self-conscious about her relationship with Bob, Helen takes a nap and falls into a nightmare. In the dream, Mr. Incredible is bench pressing a sofa filled with beautiful young women. Helen appears as a maid, but before she can confront him, she is ensnared by a line of laundry. The clothes drag her into a basket that plunges into a bottomless pool. Helen is then transported inside a giant washing machine, where she is forced to watch helplessly as Bob walks away with the other women. She suddenly wakes up in her living room, finding comfort in the sight of Jack playing safely in his playpen. This scene was likely cut for being too experimental and psychologically dark for the film's pacing. Gazer Beam's origin. In a moving deleted scene from the sequel, the Supers hold a memorial service for those who were killed by Syndrome during their years underground. Mr. Incredible delivers a speech for Simon Palladino, better known as Gazer Beam. He explains that Simon was a natural outcast whose powers was seeing through surfaces, and having laser eyes that could burn through metal made him feel like a freak. Bob recalls how he convinced Simon to turn his oddness into an asset, even coming up with the name Gazer Beam. Simon eventually grew to love the title, becoming a first-class crime fighter and a member of Bob's team. After the ban, Simon used his civilian identity as a lawyer to fight for superhero rights. However, his desperate desire to be useful again became his downfall. Syndrome exploited this weakness, luring Simon and others to No Manison Island to be killed. Bob solemnly admits that he would have become just another victim if Gazer Beam hadn't used his final moments to carve the Chronos password into the cave wall. Snug's death. In a darker, original version of the plane sequence, Helen doesn't fly the jet herself. Instead, she enlists the help of an old friend named Snug, a veteran pilot who trusts her enough to fly into a mysterious war zone without asking questions. As they approach No Manison Island, the scene plays out with much higher stakes. Snug manages to dodge several missiles, while Helen desperately commands Violet to use a force field. However, before Violet can act, the jet is struck. Helen barely manages to wrap her body around the kids to shield them as the plane explodes mid-air. After they crash into the ocean and narrowly avoid falling debris, the wreckage sinks, and Helen sees Snug's pilot cap float to the surface. When Dash frantically asks where the pilot is, Helen simply shakes her head, confirming his death. This version was eventually cut to keep the movie from becoming too grim for younger audiences. The origins of The Incredibles date back to 1993. Director Brad Bird initially conceptualized the story during a personal crisis, balancing his high filmmaking aspirations with his family life. While at Warner Brothers directing The Iron Giant, Bird envisioned the project as a 2D cel-animated homage to 1960s comic books and spy films. After The Iron Giant struggled at the box office, Bird pitched his 2D concept to John Lasseter at Pixar in 2000. Lasseter loved the story, but convinced Bird to pivot to computer animation. This was a historic shift, as it was Pixar's first film directed by an outsider and their first with an all-human cast. Early concept art for this original 2D version even included the rejected villain, Zarek. We also see a glimpse of what could have been the 2D Incredibles animation during the end credits of the first and second film. Dash's prank. In this deleted scene, we see Mr. Crop during a tedious lecture, ranting about his low wages and warning the class not to give him any guff. As he turns to the chalkboard, Dash's mischief begins. Using his powers, Dash repeatedly pins insulting signs to the teacher's back, including one that reads, "I am an idiot," and another that says, "See?" The classroom erupts in laughter every time Crop turns his back. The prank reaches its peak when Dash attaches a final note that warns the class, "Shh, watch me sit on a tack." This deleted scene was eventually replaced by the thumbtack prank seen in the final film, as it better showcased Dash's speed without him getting caught immediately. Bob stuck in traffic. In this deleted scene from the first movie, we see the harsh reality of life under the superhero ban. Stuck in a frustrating traffic jam, Bob spots a criminal on a motorcycle weaving through cars while fleeing the police. Instinctively, Bob reaches out his hand, causing the biker to collide with his super strength grip and tumble off the bike. Bob catches the criminal and tries to hand him over to the officers, expecting a moment of shared justice. Instead, the police are cold and dismissive, ordering Bob back into his car and telling him it's police business. As traffic moves, angry drivers honk and shout at him. Defeated and ignored, Bob is forced to retreat to his vehicle and drive away.